Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. I know it's been a while, I'm so sorry, but I have a video for you today. It's a spur of the moment video because of something I saw online today and it really pissed me off. Now I'm not going to get into the details don't matter, it is the subject matter in general. It's a video about privilege and being an ally, so there's tons of videos like this out there. I'm not going to pretend this is going to be the best one, but I saw something this morning which made me really want to talk about this. So there's this horrible idea, this feeling, let's talk about in fandom, because this specific thing I'm thinking of that happened today happened within a fandom. Let's talk about this. So imagine you have a fandom space, okay? A fandom space for an LGBT couple or character. Now in that fandom, obviously you're going to have people who are LGBT themselves, who relate to that character, but you're also going to have cis straight people who are obviously more than welcome to love that character and like that character. So you're going to have a diverse amount of people who are in that fandom. Now the problem comes about, and this happens in so many fandoms, I'm not going to call out just one, because I think in pretty much every fandom I've ever been in, I've seen this happen. So imagine that the fandom's going well, the show's going well, it's fantastic, and then something slightly homophobic happens. I should say, I'm not going to say something homophobic happens, let's just say something that the LGBT fans, or some of the LGBT fans, perceive to be homophobic, transphobic, biphobic, any of those. Something like that happens in the show. This is when the horrible divide happens, and this is when the problem arises, the problem I want to talk about. So you have LGBT fans that point this out, and will call it out, and will say, right, I love this show, but this here is a problem. Now the problem is, this is why I love fandom, I also hate fandom, and this is one of the reasons why. Because when this happens, there will be such a backlash against those LGBT fans. This also happens in issues of racism, for example. So you'll have a show and something racist will happen in the show, or something which can be perceived as racist, and a lot of people of colour are pointing out and saying, look, that feels racist to us, and obviously, you know, in that situation, they would probably have the more valid point of view, seeing as they would understand racism more on a personal level. That's besides the point. But you see that happening in fandom a lot, where people of colour will call out some sort of racism, and the other fans, mostly white fans, will suddenly jump on them and act like, oh, you're bad fans, you're ruining the fandom, you're being negative, why don't you just shut up? And that is so toxic. So this is what I saw happening this morning with an LGBT fandom. Well, it's a fandom surrounding an LGBT character or couple. So I'm not going to get into it completely. Something questionable was said by someone. Not going to go to names. The names aren't important. It's not a call-out video. But something questionable has happened in a storyline. Something questionable has been said by an actor. Right. So then you have LGBT fans, some of which are fine with it, some of which understandably feel pissed off. So some of those LGBT fans want to come forward and talk about that and say, look, as an LGBT person, I find that offensive and that's not good enough. Now, wouldn't you think that the appropriate response, especially from straight fans to this, would be, just you know, just being a nice person, you know, just thinking about this, wouldn't the correct response to that be, well, okay, you're LGBT and I'm not, so I'm gonna understand that, you know, this means more to you, this feels more personal to you, this is probably linked to your life experience. I'm not saying the straight cis fans even have to agree with the point. They don't have to agree with the opinion, they just have to hear it out, they just have to let it exist without stamping it down again, but they can't even do that. You would think that as members of a fandom, and fans specifically in this case of an LGBT couple or relationship, you would think that the voices of LGBT people would be more important and more valued. I don't mean more valued than the opinions of everyone else. I certainly think that there's more insight, and it's very, very important that we allow people from those oppressed groups, or from those particular groups, to have those voices. That's important. But again, I mean, I'm not saying they're always right. So a lot of people will say to me here, oh, so you're saying that just because you're from an oppressed group, you're always right about it? Like, just because you say something is, for example, just because a woman says something is sexist, does it make it sexist? No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily. And sometimes you will get people who get that stuff wrong. However, this is the point I want to make here. Just take the issues and the situations out of this. Surely, even if you, as a person from that privileged group, even if you think that person from the oppressed group is talking absolute rubbish, so they might say, you might have like a gay person saying something like, oh, this fandom is homophobic because of this. Now you might disagree with that and they might well be wrong, that's fair enough. What you don't do, what you do not do, is try and silence that person. Surely it's more important that you have a fandom space where people from those oppressed groups are able to speak out. It's that thing, isn't it, that I don't have to agree with everyone's opinions. We don't. We all have our own opinions. But we have to respect their right to express that opinion, and especially when someone is from a group which is in danger of that extra violence and that extra prejudice, it's even more important that we don't stamp those voices down. We need to make sure that we listen to them. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to agree. They're not always going to be right necessarily, but you have to listen to them. The worst thing you can do, and this is what I see fandoms do all the time, and it's so ugly, the worst thing you do is you scapegoat that person in their community, because a lot of the time what you see is when someone will complain from an oppressed group, instantly people from the privileged group will act like, they'll basically gaslight them. So they'll act like there's no problem, this person is a drama queen, the community is just looking for trouble, the community should be grateful for anything they get, regardless of whether they're happy with it or not. There's so many toxic things that come out. I hate this idea that to complain or to have a criticism even, like you can still love a fandom and a show and have a very mild criticism, but if you express it and it goes against what the majority of people from the privileged group think, you're often told that you're being dramatic and just trying to create negativity and drama and you're just trying to make a mess. Right, so you get accused of having a tantrum or something. But let me just put this to you, right? Have you ever seen anything so childish and so immature and so tantrumy as a person from a privileged group who gets mildly called out for something they may have said, which could just be the slightest bit offensive? Like, have you ever experienced that? Because that, my friend, is dramatic. That is creating weird, unnecessary negativity. That is what is wrong with the situation in the fandom. Have you noticed that when a show or a person gets called out for something, sometimes the response is just so disproportionate and weird? It's like you can mildly call someone or something out, and suddenly it's like you've accused them of serial murder. Suddenly they're on the defensive. They think they're Katniss Everdeen. They think they're Harry Potter. They think everyone's against them. They're having to defend their very goodness to the world. And it's like, no one's calling you evil. No one's saying that you're, like, monstrous or anything. People are usually saying, oh, that thing you said was kind of offensive to some people. You might want to think about that. I mean, what the hell? Like, from an LGBT perspective, have you ever seen a cis straight person mildly and politely called out for saying something which could be offensive to the LGBT community? Have you seen that happen? Like, oh my God, it's like, if it wasn't so depressing, it would be incredibly amusing, because never, I mean, you see grown people having some absolute freak out over it, like you've accused them of killing millions of people, instead of saying to them, maybe you shouldn't use this particular word, or I felt this way about something, like, oh. Something else, just in the LGBT context, because that's what brought me to this subject this morning, although this stands for all issues of privilege and oppression. Do you have that thing where people will say, like, you'll say to someone, oh, that thing you said was, you know, could be a little bit homophobic, my friend, and then they'll suddenly go off on one and be like, what? I love the gays. The gays are my life. Like, I love the gays. No, you don't love the gay. What? I hate the way they call them the gays anyway. Why do they do that? But if you love the gays so much, surely you would be listening to members of the community, and even if you didn't agree with them, you'd still respect their right to speak out, because surely the most important thing is that we want people from oppressed groups, even if we disagree with them completely, that's irrelevant. We want them to feel safe enough that they can express their opinions, because for years, and still to this day, people from oppressed groups feel like they can't speak out about their issues. They feel like they can't call something out which they perceive to be anti their community. They feel like they can't do that. It's more important that we have a space where people feel safe enough to do that. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. I've been called out before. I'm a cis woman, and I've been on YouTube for a while, and I've been on Tumblr for a while, and I've come out with some transphobic stuff. It wasn't intentionally transphobic, it was just from a lack of education. And when I got called out on that, I didn't take it really personally, and I like to think that I tried to educate myself, and I'm more than happy to apologise if I've said something which is offensive. Surely, I don't understand why it's so difficult sometimes for some people to do that, because it's not a personal attack on you. Like, we are in a society which has these horrible things. Like, we do have transphobia in society and homophobia, and all these things are so ingrained in society that of course we're going to pick it up. It doesn't make people bad people. What makes you a bad person is when someone says to you, oh, I think, you know, you might have just done something offensive. What makes you a bad person is if you just refuse to listen to that. If you refuse to listen to those voices and suddenly act like you're the victim of the situation. And again, I'm not saying that person will always be right. So let's just say in the instance of being called out for transphobia. So say I get called out for transphobia by a trans person tomorrow, and other people in the trans community disagree and they think, oh, well, that wasn't transphobic. Say there's debate in that community as to whether what I said was or wasn't transphobic. Now, as a cis person, it wouldn't be for me to sit there and have a go at the people who thought what I said was transphobic, even if I didn't agree with them, and even if within their community it was felt that they were not right. It's more important to me, and it should be more important to people, that people from that community are able to come out and say those things. I'm not saying that it's all right to come out and like send someone abuse or something, but it's so important that people from those groups feel able to speak out. That is so incredibly important. And also, because I've just used the trans example, I should say that most of the time, pretty much most of the time, if you're a person not from the oppressed group which is having the problem, then I think we should trust that they probably know more about it than we do, because we don't live that experience. And also, I don't like the way if someone feels more upset about something, when they bring something up, it's sort of discarded. So for example, I could say something which is transphobic, and a trans person could come to me and they could be upset about it. And I don't like the idea that that emotion would mean that their thoughts were invalid. I would say their emotions would probably be because they understood that issue on a personal level and I didn't. The lack of emotion doesn't make someone more right or more wrong. This has gone off on a huge tangent. I don't even know what to call this video because it's gone off in so many different places, but yeah, I saw something happening in fandom this morning. I'm seeing some real ugliness coming out, because sometimes it's not the thing itself which is the real ugliness, because people make mistakes all the time. People will all say things which are not right, and they'll be corrected, and that's fine, that's not the ugliness. The ugliness is when people in the fandom, when suddenly the people that are not from that oppressed group suddenly start trying to stamp out the people who are, and try to silence them and call them negative and say they should stay out of the fandom. No, that's not right. A fandom should be a place where all fans feel safe enough to speak out. They should feel like they are accepted and included. And I am so done with these witch hunts where somebody will call something out that they perceive to be wrong in a fandom, and they will get sent hate, and they will be absolutely silenced and obliterated, and they may even have to leave the fandom because they're called a hater, or they're called someone who's trying to create problems or dramatic. No. Sorry, that's just not right. We should be able to criticise the things we love, and we should be able to speak out if we're from these groups, if we feel something is unfair. You don't have to agree with us, but everyone has that right, surely. Okay, I'm gonna go now. I'm sure this doesn't make any sense. It probably would make sense if I spoke more about the incident which made me make this video, but I don't want to get into that because I don't want to drag that person into it or anything like that, or make the situation worse, because it's my videos are less usually about the people, it's more about the situation, the attitudes around it, and the way people react to certain things. As you probably know if you watch my channel, I don't like to get at people personally unless they are awful people like Donald Trump. So yeah, I love you loads, I'll see you really soon. Yeah, love you, bye.